Between the warm blue of the Caribbean and the long sweep of the Atlantic lies a stretch of ocean with a name that seems to bend the horizon: the Bermuda Triangle. The phrase alone summons faulty compasses, white-out seas, and aircraft or ships that vanish without a call for help. For more than a century, this corner of water has been treated as a riddle, a place where physics wobbles and time slips. But behind every headline are real lives: pilots and sailors, logs written in tidy hands, radio calls that fade to silence. The legend did not begin with rumor. It began with loss. Tonight, we'll trace the cases that gave the myth its bones, open the door to the boldest theories, and then test them against what weather, geography, and seamanship can actually explain. If the triangle is not uniquely deadly, why does it feel like it is? The answer is both sobering and very human. The Bermuda Triangle isn't an official place on any chart. It's a convenience, a rough triangle bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, covering shipping lanes, island hopper routes, cruise corridors, fishing grounds, and weekend boating traffic. Heavy use guarantees incidents, but a few names echo loud enough to carry the legend across generations. First, USS Cyclops. In March 1918, late in World War I, the U.S. Navy collier departed Barbados bound for Baltimore with 309 people aboard. Her route was common, her mission routine. She cleared port, exchanged ordinary signals, and was never heard from again. No distress call, no lifeboats, not a plank of wreckage found. An official inquiry listed possibilities: shifting cargo, structural failure, a storm at the wrong moment, but could fix nothing with certainty. A line long attributed to President Woodrow Wilson captured the feeling of the time. Only God and the sea know what happened. It remains the Navy's largest non-combat loss of life, and it lodged deep in public memory precisely because the ocean left no explanation behind. Jump to December 5th, 1945. The war is over, but training continues. Flight 19, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers with 14 airmen, takes off from Fort Lauderdale for a routine navigation exercise. At first, normal traffic. Then, unease. The flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, radios that compasses don't agree. Landmarks look wrong. Clouds thicken. The afternoon leans into winter dusk. Somewhere over a patchwork of islands and shoals, the horizon turns into a mirror. Voices debate headings. We can't recognize anything. Everything looks strange. One transmission mentions white water, likely foam below, and poor visibility. Hours of fragmentary signals bleed into silence. A rescue launch is immediate. A Martin PBM Mariner flying boat with 13 crew lifts off to search. Minutes later, a ship off Florida's coast reports a fireball and the smell of fuel. The Mariner never returns. In a single afternoon, 27 people are gone. The most sober explanations: Flight 19 lost east of Florida, fuel dwindling, forced ditchings in rough seas, the Mariner felled by a vapor explosion, sound almost too small for the weight of the loss. And that mismatch between scale and cause is the space where myths take root. Other names round out the constellation. In 1948, a Douglas DC-3 from San Juan to Miami makes routine position reports and then fails to arrive. In 1963, the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, carrying molten sulfur, transits near the Straits of Florida and disappears. Debris is recovered, but no hull is found. In 1967, a small cabin cruiser called Witchcraft, within sight of Miami's lights, radios for assistance and is gone when help reaches the position. Each case has context: old wiring and known maintenance issues, structural concerns, small boat vulnerability near reefs. But when their details are stripped to silhouettes and grouped inside a triangle, drawn after the fact, the pattern looks uncanny. The mind reaches for bigger explanations. When facts end at the waterline, imagination rushes in. By the 1960s, magazines and radio turned the triangle into a zone where the ordinary rules stopped working and explanations fanned out like compass points. Some looked upward, the triangle as a hunting ground for UFOs. Strange lights in the night sky, abrupt instrument failures, convoys of planes that vanish as if plucked away. Flight 19's double blow, 5 training planes, then a rescue craft, seemed tailor-made for abduction stories. Others looked down. Atlantis, the legendary civilization said to have sunk beneath these waters, re-emerged in popular imagination. Mystical accounts spoke of energy crystals still pulsing on the seafloor, disrupting electronics and compasses. The Bimini Road, straight-edge stone blocks off the Bahamas, was cast as a drowned causeway. Geologists point to natural fracture patterns in beach rock, but images of a road near the triangle linger powerfully. Some bent time, stories of portals, wormholes, and an electronic fog that clings to aircraft, slows clocks, and scrambles instruments are told in vivid first-person voices. A tunnel of cloud, a spiral of compass needles, a wrong distance traveled in the right amount of time. Personal testimony is potent, and by nature, hard to test. A few theories sound scientific because they are rooted in real phenomena if applied boldly. Methane hydrates can destabilize on some continental margins, releasing bubbles that, in lab scenarios, reduce local water density and undercut buoyancy. Imagine a ship dropping almost vertically with little surface chaos. Methane in the air could, in theory, foul engines. The Sargasso Sea, with weak currents and mats of floating weed, might trap a sailboat in calm. The Gulf Stream, relentless and fast, can carry debris far from any wreck site, creating the illusion of disappearance. These ideas persist for a reason. We scale our explanations to match our emotions. When the loss feels colossal, accident feels too small a word. We reach past storms and human error toward something extraordinary, but the ocean matches no one's sense of proportion. It runs on physics, not drama. To see through the legend, start with exposure. The triangle's lanes rank among the busiest on Earth for both ships and aircraft. Dense traffic creates long incident lists anywhere. Draw a box of similar size over the Western Pacific, the English Channel, or the South China Sea and count a century of accidents. You'll see volume, not malice. Then weather. The subtropical Atlantic can switch moods quickly. The region sits in the hurricane nursery. Even outside storm season, it breeds squall lines, thunderstorms, microbursts, and downbursts, columns of air that slam from cloud to sea, then fan out with destructive force. A downburst can take a careful approach and make it catastrophic in seconds. Over water, where the horizon is a thin line and depth cues are poor, even modest weather can push pilots and captains past their margins. On the surface, add the menace of rogue waves, isolated walls of water that can double the prevailing wave height and arrive with little warning. Combine that with the Gulf Stream, a north-running river in the sea that can steepen waves, shove vessels off course, and scatter debris with startling speed. A ship that founders near the stream may leave almost no coherent trail. Now, bathymetry. The Florida-Bahamas shelf is shallow. Step off it and the bottom plunges into trenches and basins miles deep. Heavy wreckage that slips past the shelf can settle in silence beyond practical recovery. Side-scan sonar only reveals what you search with enough time and luck. Absence of a found wreck in deep water usually means volume, not voodoo. Navigation, especially pre-GPS, adds another layer. Magnetic compasses align with magnetic north, not true north. The difference, magnetic declination, varies by place and shifts over time. The moving agonic line, where declination is near zero, has crossed parts of this region in various eras. A compass that acts wrong may be accurate in a place your habit misreads. Combine fatigue, instrument quirks, imperfect radio beacons, and the geometry of similar-looking islands, and small heading errors over empty water grow into big positional mistakes. In the Flight 19 scenario, imagine believing you're over the Florida Keys when you are in fact east over the Bahamas. Fly west to find home helps only if you truly are east. If you're already west, that instinct takes you farther out into the Atlantic. What of methane hydrates? Yes, hydrates exist and can destabilize, especially in colder margins. Yes, lab work shows dramatic local effects, but direct links to modern sinkings in this specific region are tenuous. Consider it physically possible, unproven, and likely rare. Aircraft specifics matter too. TBM Avengers were sturdy but not invincible. Their radios were fickle, and overwater navigation in marginal weather was a test even for veterans. The PBM Mariner was a giant flying boat with fuel vapor vulnerabilities. Eyewitness accounts of a fireball near the Mariner's path fit a mechanical failure rather than a kidnapping by the sky. For Flight 19, the most consistent modern reading stacks ordinary factors: disorientation, a leader convinced of the wrong position, reluctance to overrule rank as weather worsened, fuel dwindling, nightfall, and a rough sea that offered little chance after ditching. No portal is required for 5 planes to run out of fuel over ocean. On the statistics, marine insurers don't levy special premiums simply because a ship crosses this triangle. Coast Guard statements over decades note that incident rates are commensurate with traffic and weather. Many so-called mystery cases, when re-examined in files and logs, show storms on the dates in question, recorded maintenance problems, or cargo and stability issues that make a tragic kind of sense. And visibility bias matters. A yacht that vanishes 40 miles offshore with no beacon becomes a blank on the record. Later, a writer maps the loss inside a triangle and calls it uncanny. A similar yacht lost in a named storm near Cape Hatteras will be logged as storm damage and ignored by mystery lists. We name some regions and not others. Naming shapes attention. The triangle concentrates storytelling more than it concentrates danger. The modern outline of the legend is a product not just of waves and weather, but of publishing. A 1960s magazine article stitched together disappearances and floated the idea of a dangerous zone. In the 1970s, Charles Berlitz's bestseller, The Bermuda Triangle, gathered cases, emphasized puzzle pieces, and glazed over context. It became a cultural event. In reply, researcher and librarian Larry Couchet dug through original documents and argued that many celebrated stories were misreported, misdated, or easily explained when you returned the missing context. His work was careful and damning, but corrections rarely travel as fast as thrilling mystery. Television reenactments, dramatic animations, and sensational documentaries did the rest. The myth endures because it offers 2 comforts. The first is narrative. The world might be perforated by doors, and the sea might be stranger than we think. That makes our daily lives feel connected to a larger story. The second is absolution. If a loss happened in a haunted zone, maybe no one made a fatal decision. That is easier to live with than the harder truth that small errors, bad maintenance, or unlucky weather can add up. Add the rise of mass tourism in Florida, the boom in light aircraft and recreational boating, and the paperback market of the 1960s to 70s, and you get the perfect greenhouse for a maritime legend. Modern navigation has peeled back much of the mystery's fog. Ships and planes ride constellations of satellites, GPS, Galileo, GLONASS, and broadcast positions with AIS and data links. EPIRBS and PLBS shriek to satellites the moment they get wet. Weather forecasting and storm tracking have leapt forward. The U.S. Coast Guard and regional SAR teams coordinate with aircraft cutters and space-based tools. Risk remains. Storms still kill, currents still deceive, but the zone of ignorance has shrunk. Revisiting Flight 19 with modern tools, investigators can model headings and winds and propose a sober path to loss. Wrong mental map, east to west corrections that reinforce the error, fuel exhaustion, night ditchings, and a sea state that overwhelmed survival gear. The Mariner's likely explosion fits its reputation and witness accounts. The drama of vanishing into thin air dissolves into multiple ordinary mechanisms stacking up on a bad afternoon. For USS Cyclops, consider a single-shaft ship with possible structural vulnerabilities, heavy cargo that might shift, and seas that ferociously punish timing errors. A catastrophic failure a few miles beyond the shelf can take a huge ship down quickly and hide her deep. For Marine Sulphur Queen, note the ship's alterations and cargo behavior under heat and motion. For Witchcraft, remember that small boats can capsize within sight of city lights if they ground, take a wake, or flood. If flotation is minimal, they can vanish with terrifying speed. Insurers and coast guards signal the truth in the quietest way. No special premium for transiting these waters, no special advisory beyond universal seamanship. File a float plan, maintain your craft, watch the weather, respect the Gulf Stream, carry redundant comms. The Triangle is a busy ocean, not a cursed one. None of this shrinks the emotional charge. It is hard to think of a father, a sister, a crew of friends setting out across ordinary blue and never arriving. A radio call that breaks up. A line on a chart that stops mid-ocean. An empty slip at the pier. We draw triangles on maps because it is painful to sit with randomness. To admit that vast water, complex weather, and human limits sometimes intersect in ways that look like magic from far away. Myth is not foolishness. It is a way of giving shape to fear and meaning to loss. So should we stop telling Bermuda Triangle stories? Not at all. We should tell them better. Give ships their names back and crews their context. Marvel at the sea's power without granting it malice. Keep a place in the imagination for the unresolved, while letting weather, physics, and seamanship carry most of the weight. The world is mysterious enough without adding extra ghosts. What do you think? Is the Bermuda Triangle a door in the world or a mirror held up to the stories we tell? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more investigations like this, where legends meet logs and we separate what's dramatic from what's demonstrable, remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. The ocean keeps many secrets. We'll keep returning to ask better questions.